still feeling stuck. Um, and maybe I've hit my ceiling. It sucks because I put in a lot of work into this game. It's probably the most work I put into a fighting game yet. But at some point, I can't keep hitting my head against the same wall over and over again. I think at some point, maybe this is where you just say, hey, you know what? Maybe you just don't got it. I don't know. My name is Zamir Stills, also known as Zoma, and I have been playing Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising since its release in 2023. I've been fortunate to do a lot in the game during these almost 3 years, winning local tournaments, commentating matches at the highest level, and getting top 8 at various regional and online brackets. However, one goal that had always eluded me was earning a medal for the game, which meant either getting top 3 at a larger regional tournament or top 8 at a major. The closest I had come before this year was getting 5th at a regional in Knoxville called Knox Out, and heading into this year I wanted to place a larger emphasis on being a competitor, especially in GBVSR. Shifting my priorities this way, I had hoped to see greater improvements, which would in turn lead to greater results. What would follow, however, would be some of the most difficult months of my fighting game career. Starting in January, I had to DQ from the Frosty Fausting singles bracket because of controller issues, so I didn't even get to play. When I could play in the 2v2 bracket, our duo got 9th because I lost my side of the top 8 qualifier while my partner won his. A couple of months later at Max Mode, a regional tournament in Atlanta that I had really put my eggs into that basket, I again barely missed top 8 with a 9th place finish. Another 2 months later, I fell just short of top 48 at Combo Breaker, bowing out at 49th. During all of this, I kept suffering more increasingly disappointing performances in online brackets where I would fall far short of my seed. With all of these failures racking up, I was feeling more frustrated and discouraged by the day. I'd been grinding the game more than I had ever done for any game, and people kept saying I was improving, but it felt like all I was doing was going backwards. The feeling of constantly letting people and myself down was taking its toll on me and breaking me down. To be fully transparent, it got to the point where I entered a depressive spiral, felt severely burnt out, and seriously considered quitting everything. Maybe I just wasn't meant to achieve what I thought was possible, and I'd be better off accepting that. But as much as I tried to accept it, I just couldn't do it. I love playing and competing in fighting games too much to let it go. If I just dropped it, it would feel like I was missing something in my life. Additionally, I compete and create every day with the mission of inspiring others to pursue their passions with no reservations. So what message would it send if I let myself give up? Just as importantly, I'm also blessed with an incredibly supportive village around me that pushed me to keep at it. They kept urging me to stick with it because they saw improvement, ability, and drive that I couldn't see in myself. So with that all being said, I decided to at least honor the commitments I had for this year's remaining scheduled tournaments before thinking about hanging it up. With the first hellish half of 2026 in the rear view, a Virginia regional called Beast in the East, or BITE, marked the beginning of the back 6 months, a perfect time to try turning the page. For this tournament and beyond, I decided that I needed to adopt an approach that didn't focus on results. Rather, I would focus on creating wins for myself based on even marginal efforts towards improvement in different ways. If you've seen my Twitter, you've seen me post near daily about what wins I had for the day that aren't based on results. Little things like landing a key confirm, making efforts towards actively practicing something, and even just showing up every day. I also started to say thank you for the games after playing sets with people to force myself to practice gratitude and humility. These were just little tweaks, and it wasn't perfect, but at the very least, I was making the attempt at having a healthier mindset. And as I have learned, making the attempt really is the best thing you can do sometimes. After about a month of putting this all into practice, it came time to head out for BITE. Looking at my path for Granblue, I was seeded 14th out of 34 players. Funny enough, it was the lowest seed out of all 4 games I had entered for the weekend, despite this one being my main game. And people on my team were saying that was way too low for me, but I told them I didn't have the right to argue for a higher placing because I felt I didn't have the results to really show for it. I've also just never really been one to complain about my seeding, as I've always said, you play whoever's in front
front of you. It would be a tough traverse to top 8, but that's just what I had to do. Speaking of tough traversal, the travel there felt like a bad omen for the weekend because when I got to the hotel I had booked, there was nobody even there to check me in. I sat in the lobby for half an hour, yelled to see if there was somebody in the back, and even called the front desk phone right in front of me to see if that would magically bring an employee from the ether to do their job and help me. I ended up having to book a last-minute reservation at another hotel, luckily one that was still walking distance from the venue. Thankfully, now having a place to sleep after an eventful evening, I got my 8 hours in for the Undernight and Granblue brackets happening the very next day. I wasn't expecting too much out of the uni tournament happening, first because I was both still relatively new to the game and switching to a new character altogether. Really, the mission was just walk away feeling good about my performance and build some confidence going into Granblue happening a couple hours later. Unfortunately, I was the star of a comedy of errors my whole run because it was just nothing but mistakes that forced me out at a crushing 9th place. It wasn't so much the placing that killed me, although coming up just short of a top cut for what felt like the 100th time this year did feel terrible. Without sugarcoating it, I just thought I played like shit, which was the last thing I needed confidence-wise. All I could think was, here we go again. I practiced and came all this way to a tournament just to blow it again. But before I could spiral too hard, I just focused on doing the next necessary thing, which was to eat lunch and take time to reset myself. So a DoorDash and a day nap later, I put on my polos and pressed forward to play some Granblue. Because I had played in the earlier uni bracket, which was running at the same time as the first pool for Granblue, I had to play in the second pool, one that was a minefield of matchups that could pose a problem for me. The top seed of this pool was Sierra, a strong Galleon player who finished top 24 at Combo Breaker and who I had as the favorite to win this whole bracket. Even before I'd have to fight him, there was Kuga, a well-seasoned Vera veteran who was basically my senior as I was coming up in the Rising ranks. Additionally, there was Rose Hashida, a fast improving fairy player that I knew I couldn't sleep on. There was no shortage of sharks in the Virginia Beach waters, but I had to take it one set at a time, starting with my round 1. At the time, I wasn't familiar with the player Nino, so I didn't know what to expect when they queued up with Gran. I played respectfully for the first few interactions to feel them out, but then started to see some cracks in their neutral strategy. They would attempt an overdrive surge to catch me moving haphazardly, which, to be fair, is a somewhat common game plan for Gran players looking to score an explosive hit. An area of practice I've been prioritizing for a while now is aggressive positioning, which would do me well here. I focused on walking and using non-committal neutral options to get to a spot where I would be able to punish a bad boot, and it paid off with a decisive 3-0 win to start the run. Being able to comfortably identify and counter my opponent's strategy provided a much-needed confidence boost, one that I would definitely require going into my next set because it was time to fight the fairy. This is a notably disadvantageous matchup for Vera, being that she struggles most against zoning, which Fairy is world class in doing. My own personal record in this matchup reads like that of this season's New York Mets, with many runs being lost to Fairy. I kid you not, I think it actually took me 2 years before I beat this character in bracket for the first time. I had mulled over counterpicking with Meg or Seox for the matchup as they were markedly more suited to fight Fairy. However, I felt that I could win with Vera if I didn't make excuses and really pushed myself to explore the depths of this matchup. This was my opportunity to see if I could do just that. I again went into the well of the practice positioning by walking at Fairy with every single minus frame given to me from a normal. As I played the patient man's game of fishing, I walked and waited until I had my chance at the prize, which in this case was starting my offense to expose Fairy's bad defense. Finding the opportunities from a GG summon cancel, I would rush in through the gap and make them block or hit them outright to get started. From there, I kept up the advantage to score the first game. The game plan was working. In the second game, I kept much of the same neutral strategy, but started to fine-tune my offense based on what info I got from game 1. This led to a dominant performance in that crucial phase, catapulting me to a 2-0 lead. I entered game 3 with full faith in my preparation and performance to this point, and it showed with key callouts to break the game wide open. All set long, I noticed that Rose built their neutral around normals without special canceling, save for rare occasions. And through my thorough study of the Fairy matchup, I knew this presented an opportunity if Rose were to do a far light in this fashion. This turns out to be a key key window for Vera to be a threat because Fairy is -3 on block here. If she tries to act quickly afterwards, especially with another normal, I can cleanly beat any immediate option from her with far H and convert it into huge damage if I have the meter. I had set up this exact scenario and was ready to pounce on it to secure a sweep over Rose. I was immensely proud of myself for being able to display all the work and determination I had put into that matchup. Being able to trust in my preparation and execution was a feeling that had become rare for me, but it was starting to take hold that day. Now for the top 8 qualifier, it was time to test myself further against Kuga in the Vera mirror. Kuga and I have fought multiple times over the years, and we share similar philosophies regarding how to play Vera. And in a way, I think that's what makes it challenging to fight him. Most Vera players will throw themselves at me with rather ill-advised options, and I have become consistently good at beating that style of play. Kuga, however, is willing to play steadily and use Vera's strong normal to get himself to a good spot, and he would use this strategy today to get a strong start out of the gates in game 1. My response in looking for counter pokes was not very successful. However, I was allotted favor in multiple Granblue situations to steal the game despite being behind multiple times. I think winning like this was important because I've always been focused on trying to win a clean game, but I need to not look a gift horse in the mouth and run with the sloppy wins I get as well. That being said though, I did back out to character select to collect myself and mentally rehash what changes would need to happen in my plan. I've learned that doing this is extremely valuable, as giving myself a chance to reset after something wild or upsetting happens can put me in the best state of mind for the next game. So with a calmer mind in game 2, I started to parse the habits Kuga was showing me. My familiarity with Vera helped me quickly analyze and assess what I was seeing and form a response in practically every phase of the game. My defense became stout, the neutral was much more commanding, and I scored hits with decisive offense. All of this came together for a much more convincing game 2 victory. Game 3 was more of the same, assuredness in my adjustments and letting the game come to me. Even in the face of Kuga's own adaptations, it only took one interaction for me to answer back with highly rewarding countermeasures. I was finally finding myself playing freely and confidently. I'd become so familiar with the self-shackled version of myself that had made itself at home the last several months. The player on the bite stage that afternoon was unrecognizable in the best way possible, and it was this version of me that made it to top 8 winner side without dropping a single game. It didn't really hit me until I tweeted it out that I had guaranteed 5th place for myself with no losses at this point. Of course, I wanted to see how much further I could go, but there was a feeling of contentness that I had where I could finally say, I'm proud of how I did today. How much further I would go would depend on my next set, winner semifinals against Sierra. As I had mentioned, Sierra is a strong player in his own right, but it was compounded by the fact that he played a character in Galleon that I also had a bad track record against. If Fairy was my old white whale, a Galleon bracket win was now the Megalodon to my Jason Statham. Much like I had done with Fairy, I'd been hard at work at researching and improving in this matchup, as well as dismissing the notion of a counterpick. I had an Ilsa that I could have opted for, but again, I thought it was better to push the limits with Vera, as I think she's good enough to win if you work for it. With nerves admittedly setting in, there was a level of comfort in having a foundational plan to leverage that was based on all of the research and work that I had put in. Game 1 saw some fruitful returns on the plan, namely impatient neutral and defense. However, I deviated just one too many times and Sierra made me pay for it. I showed signs of life in Game 2, however, by steadying myself after a bit and then changing up my offense once I had the chance. We were now knotted up at 1 game apiece, and I could definitely feel the set's momentum teetering on the balance. The third game featured more good execution in some aspects of the plan I had laid out for myself, but for some reason, I had stopped leveraging the offensive adjustments I had made in the previous game. I had successfully thrown Galleon several times to this point, but I mysteriously had abandoned it and defaulted back to ineffective strike pressure that Sierra broke free from repeatedly. And with that, I dropped a pivotal Game 3. I didn't give up hope, however, and kept the fight alive for as long as I could in Game 4. Unfortunately, the same issue still resided, and Sierra was able to take the set on the back of great defense and neutral on his part. One of the things that can cause me the most frustration is losing to the same things over and over again. It drives me crazy. In this case, dropping a set to Galleon, a character that has beaten me in more brackets than there are rocks on a country driveway, should have sent me into a fury. But that day, I wasn't totally discouraged. Sure, it was a slight letdown, but instead of anger or defeatism, I felt determination to earn another set with Siero, as I felt truly deep down that I could win that one if I got the chance. And I wasn't ready to stop playing yet. However, the path to a rematch would have to start with a different rematch, one with Rose Hashida and Fairy. With how well the previous set against them went, I had no reason to wade in my assuredness, but the way that this manifested in game 1 was interesting to say the least. I found myself moving pretty sloppily and opting for much more high risk, high reward plays in contrast to the steadier play that had won me the pools match. As such, I was in a life deficit early. Luckily, I found the hits at the right time and made the most of them to take the first game. I was still following the same script in game 2 and it netted me a win, but it was weird because I don't think I was playing the matchup well at all. Rather, I was just unabashedly imposing my will and winning the interaction war since I wasn't necessarily being punished for it. I guess there is something to be said about this being a way to secure a win because I have 100% been in Rose's shoes before. Having your opponent throw caution to the wind while you're on the back foot trying to parse through it is a demanding spot to be in during a tournament. And it's often me being on the receiving end of this, so it was almost foreign to be on the other side of it. This also meant I knew that I shouldn't stop it, despite it not necessarily being clean. So in game 3, I kept up the pressure when I felt them resolve to being respectful of my offense. This allowed me to push Fairy all the way to the corner, and from there, it was just a matter of flooding the gates of a defense already under duress. Just like that, another sweep was in the bag against Fairy, and I was moving on. While I felt good about the result, I had a major point of immediate feedback for myself as I advanced. I had to cut back on the overconfidence in play when it results in haphazardness out the gate. I was able to get away with it here, but I could get absolutely skewered for it against an opponent that's ready for it. Only if it's clear later in the set that I can expose an inability to curtail it should I opt for it. If I could decisively combine the steady play that I had honed to this point with the well-placed and well-timed aggression, the best of both worlds could bring me to a bronze if I could win the next match in loser semis. And it turns out the soup du jour was rematch Ribolita because Kuga was up to bat yet again with his Vera. I was not kidding you when I said my path to top 8 would be hard considering my opponents from round 2 and 3 would both make it to the top 5. But even with the respect I showed for my opponent's pedigree, I still had a feeling that I belonged there with them for once. Now it was time to claim my spot on the podium. From the word go, I heeded the feedback from my previous set and went back to using aggressive positioning through low commitment options. I seized control in the first round and was well on my way to wrapping up the second until my adjustment came with some strings attached. I found myself becoming overly passive to close out the round. Kuga took advantage of it to run away with it and force a final one. However, rather than beat myself up for choking the round away, I kept my wits about me and corrected course quickly. This is where that well-timed aggression would need to come into play. I noticed my opponent's hesitation in starting and maintaining offense, so I began to challenge more on defense. Using the room they gave to me, control was now back in my hands as I comfortably earned an early set advantage. We moved into game 2 at the same tempo with me leading the dance. The pace of the match seemed to move at my beck and call like I was a confident conductor on the stage. I was weaving around their pokes at will and then beating their mash timings with various delayed strikes. With game 2 in my grasp, I felt a flow state with me. There have been very few times in my fighting game career where I was playing and thought of every action, this will work. I know the potency of that supreme confidence well, however, because the last time I experienced this state was my grandiose upset against Lagia in KOF at last year's SNK World Championship. It was a feeling of total euphoria, synchronicity, and beauty beyond words, an unrivaled high that reminded me what the chase is all for. And with all of this, the chase for the medal I had spent almost 3 years for, with all its blood, sweat, and tears shed, was finally over. All good things must come to an end, however. Siero would beat me in the losers finals rematch on his way to winning the whole tournament, much like I had predicted. I couldn't be too upset about it though, he more than earned it, and I still walked away with my head held high with a performance I could be proud of. The weekend still saw its separate hardships with the aforementioned uni bracket and then the subsequent letdown in KOF a couple of days later. I mentioned these to remind both y'all and myself that there's not a point where I magically just have it all figured out. The journey towards my healthiest mindset said, is one that will last me the rest of my career, and one that will have its countless trials and tribulations. There will be moments where it seems hopeless, but maybe I could watch this video back and stay motivated to take the next necessary step, one step at a time. And if you're somebody like me who is struggling with their competitive journey, maybe not even in fighting games, but in some other pursuit, I hope this video can do the same for you as well. But either way, thank you very much for watching this video. Originally, this had started out as an analysis video. However, I thought this experience would be best told in a narrative fashion, as I think the transparency of what I've been going through was most needed. I'm not gonna lie, being so vulnerable about these hardships is pretty damn scary. However, I'm also aware that these are experiences that are common to people who deeply care about their pursuits, even if they don't want to show the ugly truth. So while it may not be the pristine picture that many would try to offer you, I believe sharing real stuff like this is needed. This channel is meant to document my journey through music and fighting games, including all the human aspects of what lies on that path. If this at all resonates with you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as it would very much help me keep it going. Additionally, share this with anybody you know that could use it, because one aspect that helps me keep showing up every day is knowing that we're not alone in this struggle. Next up in my journey is CEO in a few weeks, but I'm just gonna take it a day at a time and still show up to be better with each one. Until the next video though, this has been Zamir Zoma Stills. Take it easy, y'all.